A sales coach might say it's selling. I would say it's getting buy-in. And so that's what we believe with business planning is identifying what is one of the 4 Ps that you're going to get out of doing this, sharing it with the team, and to be really hyper-specific.
Well, hello and welcome to another guest interview here on the Profit with Law podcast. I'm your host, Moshe Amsel, and I'm excited for our conversation today because I've actually been having this conversation with a number of my clients. For those of you who don't know, we provide fractional CFO services for law firms that are in the 3 million revenue to 3 million revenue space and above, up until about 15 million. And what we do is we go in and we help the business understand its numbers and make decisions from a numbers perspective. So we'll help them with their financial planning of the business. We'll help them with KPIs, performance-based compensation. And part of what we do is we meet with their leadership team and we hold them accountable for the things that they say that they're going to do. And we just kind of help them with incorporating this into their process. And what I found is that most of our clients, when they have a COO in place that is functioning as a COO, our job gets, what's the word I want to use? It's almost like those, those race cars that have like the nitrous gas that they, the afterburners or whatever it is that supercharges the car's driving. It's fast to begin with, but it really goes faster. So we claim that we can help our clients get to 35%, 40% profit margins in 2 years. With companies that have a fully functioning COO, we can do it as fast as 12 months, 18 months. And the reason for that is because the COO does the job of holding people accountable. They're in the business every day and they're literally having these conversations with their people. More often than not, our clients don't have a COO, or they just put somebody into that place, and we are helping them to train their COO, helping them to vet their COO. And that's why I'm excited about our guest today. Jennifer Goldman and her team have spent over 30 years transforming more than 650 service businesses and training thousands on scaling and supporting growth. Her operations change work leverages visualization to enhance people. Let me read that again. Her operations change work leverages visualization to enhance people, productivity, profits, and presence. Clients of her virtual COO services have seen a 25 to 50% increase in capacity, 15 to 25% rise in profits, and gained the ability to be proactive rather than reactive. And by the way, just to put it in perspective, because she says 15 to 25% rise in profits, I mentioned us getting clients to 35%, 40% profit margin. When they come in the door, they're usually in the 7 to 15% range. So just put that in perspective. We're helping our clients achieve a 200% increase in their profits. And a lot of that has to do with the COO and them doing their job, which is why it's no shock to me that Jennifer is experiencing this rise in profits with her people when they're helping them, get that COO position filled properly. So Jennifer, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here. Love the vibe.
And we appreciate you being here as well. So real quick, I just want you to introduce yourself to my audience. Let the listeners of Profit with Law know a little bit about how you got into this and why you do what you do. And then we'll jump in and talk about the actual virtual COO service model and what people need to think about there.
Yeah, absolutely. So how I got into this is I worked in small businesses in my teens while going to school. I was one of those type A and also was expected in my family. And then in college, I also worked in SUNY Geneseo system and overhauled their processes and procedures, and then went on to do it for several other businesses. And then I tied in certified financial planning and worked with business owners for many years. And I kept seeing the same repeat of leading change, inclusion of people, how to get people buy-in and get around the fear. And so finally, after being in, let's see, maybe I would say 9 or 10 businesses, and having a whole career in one avenue. I did a complete, as I say, went to the dark side and became a consultant to businesses that were in health, wealth, and advocacy. So in law, in finance, and holistic health, because I saw the positive of supporting the first, which is the CEO or the visionary, and supporting the team and rising that boat, as we use the cliche, all things rise. And I loved it. I got hooked on it, to be perfectly honest with you. Became my adrenaline, my dopamine. And that was many, many years ago.
Awesome. So just paint the broad strokes for us. What exactly is virtual COO services? What do you do? And just to put it in context, I don't typically invite a guest on here and just have them pitch their services, right? That's not why I'm asking. I really want our audience to understand what it is exactly that you perform. Are you acting as a COO in somebody's business? Are you training their COO? Like, what exactly are we doing so that we can set the stage for the rest of our conversation?
Yeah, thank you for that. Because I'm an ultimate giver. So the model is all about teaching the seconds how to scale up the business and keep everything running smoothly and profitably and culture good. So everything about the infrastructure, all the way from the marketing to the staff and performance. And so as we teach the techniques, we're also helping improve and lead through change. So it's like lead by example. And then we're out. So the idea is, to be perfectly honest, it's what I wanted, right? When I became second at places, I had nobody to lean on, nobody to teach me the ropes of running a bigger business. So we wanted to give that back. So that's what we do. So we're alongside you, we're teaching, we're doing, we're leading the change, and then we're out and we get to celebrate from the sidelines.
Awesome. I love that. And I want to dive into the actual stuff that you do. I think that's really what is going to provide the most value today. So one of the things in your bio that I use to introduce you is this phrase: her operations change work leverages visualization to enhance people productivity, profits, and presence. What does that mean, that you leverage visualization to enhance the 4 Ps?
Yeah. It's on simple terms, it's drawing a picture. On complex terms, let me break it down. So, for example, let's say you're thinking of different ideas around marketing or internal process or systems changes. It's writing them down in an online or a whiteboard. I know this sounds simple, but I'll explain the 4 Ps. Writing them down so the team can see them. So the team can start to buy into the idea well before you pull the let's go. And writing them down with purpose. So when we talk about the 4 Ps, again, it's people, profitability, presence, and productivity. We use those as the 4 benefits. So the point is, you shouldn't be pursuing something unless you know why. Like, what's the end game? And so it's, a sales coach might say it's selling. I would say it's getting buy-in. And so that's what we believe with business planning is identifying what is one of the 4 Ps that you're going to get out of doing this, sharing it with the team, and to be really hyper specific. I joke about the whiteboards, but I'm not joking. I literally, when I work with businesses, I'm like, where are your whiteboards? Are they in the hallways? They can't just be in the CEO's room. Write on them. If you're remote, because we have firms, obviously businesses that are remote, they're using like Asana or Lucid or like all these fun onboards. So I'm sure that you know what I'm talking about, and I could even show some whiteboards. But
pulling my whiteboard there,
right. See, yeah, exactly. See, I cut them up. I went to Home Depot and cut up the boards that you use behind your tile in your bathroom. But hey, whatever works, right? And I have like 4 whiteboards all over me, my office. Yeah. So, visualizing that way. The other thing is, and this is a game changer. So when we work with businesses, there's like 5 major things that we do when we visualize. But this one is a leader, and that's around roles, authority, and responsibility. So even HR firms have never heard of this technique. And I'm going to explain why it works, because there's neuroscience behind it. When you talk about roles and responsibilities and levels of authority, we're sticking them in these disparate job descriptions. It doesn't work for teams anymore. And it doesn't work for younger people that are professionally driven and, are go-getters. So now we say, visualize that as well. Like literally, again, sticky note, whiteboard, Excel sheet, whatever, lucid board. I don't really care, but team write out what level of authority do you have? Team write out what your responsibilities are. The reason this works, and it seems shocking, is because when you write, your prefrontal cortex kicks in and your amygdala calms down. So that fear and flight that we experience when we talk about our value, our responsibilities, our authority level, that is the fear and flight that kicks in when you're talking verbally because you're using a different part of your brain. The minute you put a picture in front, your rational brain kicks in. So it's the biggest calmer I've ever seen. It opens the doors. Nobody worries about getting let go when you do this. Nobody worries about getting demoted. Everybody is in it together. And I can keep going, but that's just one of the...
Yeah. Now, one of the things that I, teach my clients, especially in our elite coaching program, our Law Firm Growth Elite Coaching Program is geared towards maxed out solos looking to grow beyond themselves. So we take people on the journey of, 500,000 in revenue, 250, 500, 750, somewhere in that range to 2 million, right? That's the sweet spot for this program. But one of the things that I need to help them to learn along the way is that there's a difference between delegation and delegating responsibility. Delegation is where we're basically just telling somebody, you have to do this task. The problem is that when we delegate tasks, we are still owning the responsibility, which means that when somebody doesn't do what they need to do or they don't do it right, we're the ones stepping in to do it, right? And then we're not really freeing ourselves up. We're freeing ourselves up a little bit, but we're still the ones that are responsible. When we delegate responsibility, we're basically saying the buck stops with you. So if you're the lawyer I hire, for example, and you're doing the legal services and I am stepping into the owner role and I'm not going to be practicing law anymore, I don't want to be overseeing the files. I don't want to be making sure that the deadlines are being met, that court appearances are being met. If you're sick, you need to find coverage for that, right? Not me. So what I'm curious about is this concept that you just laid out. Does this kind of solve that on its own? Does it allow people to kind of self-select themselves into being the responsible person and really solve this whole issue of delegating responsibility?
I don't know if it 100% solves, but it definitely leaps you forward, right? It's, to be frank, you and I both know when you write something, that's a form of accountability. So if you're writing it down, and by the way, for solos especially, because I've done this like with audiences too, right? And they're like, it's just me. I'm like, I get it. But I'm sure you might have a bookkeeper. I'm sure you might be using a significant other to do your marketing. Like, let's be real. It's not just you, right? The writing down lets certain people realize they own that portion. So let me try to verbally visualize this. Think about who makes a decision versus who strategizes, who manages, and who does in a chart. And then where do people lie in that on each part of the business? That when you write that, I think you get about 90% of the way there. The last 10 is not wavering from that. So I think you just said it. Basically, when you delegate to someone else and they don't do, it's your job to then say, no, let me remind you that's on you. And this is why I like the visual. If the visual board is front and center, let's say you do it online, but then you print it and stick it on a wall, they pass by it all the time. So they more quickly realize it's on them. But that last 10% is sticking to what was said, sticking to what was written, and holding them accountable.
What do you do for this visualization piece with the boards and stuff? What do you do for somebody who's running a completely remote operation?
Yeah, so we use Lucid tied in with the Sauna, but let me use like a law software example. So for example, you would use Clio and then maybe a Lucid or a Canva. Some people have Canva, and think of little sticky notes on it. And so once you create that, then you tell people wherever they are, hopefully they have a printer to print it out. Just stick it somewhere on the desk. I don't believe in a lot of paper. I'm paperless, but there are certain things that are absolute musts. That's one of them. And you know what? You don't have to keep it forever, right?
I was thinking that maybe you made it like the background of their computer screen, or like a Zoom background, or like whenever we share screen, that's what's showing up.
Yeah. But that's good for somebody else. You're right. You could do that, but then that's telling the other person, right? It's about telling yourself, stick in your lane, stick to what you wrote, and hold others accountable. That's
okay. Now, this kind of seems too easy. Maybe it almost seems like gimmicky. Like, okay, so you're just going to take a whiteboard, you're just going to write the stuff down, and then you're going to have people, get together. We're going to sing Kumbaya, and everybody's going to talk about their, what they're responsible for.
Yeah.
Who's directing that, and what is the process for, I guess, even identifying roles? Like, is that all a self-selection process, or, just walk me, there's got to be more than just these two pieces, right? So what's the rest of it?
There is more. I'm going to turn it back on you on finance in a second to prove it out. The more is, what is the more? Besides doing it, I know it sounds crazy, but once people do it, they're like, I can't believe this. Was it that easy? I think the more that people are missing is doing it together. That's instead of doing it in a vacuum. And here's the other thing. What's most interesting is when you do this, some people write their name into boxes, and let's say if you're not a solo, right? Write their name into boxes, and you're like, no, I'm in that box. And then you start having a discussion about who's in that box. And maybe the person that put their name in that box is somebody who aspires to be in that box, right? Like they want to manage versus just be the doer. Awesome. They just self-promoted. They advocated for themselves, right? Love it. And so then the discussion is, okay, well, I know you want to be there, but now what? This is where it gets a little bit more vague. The now what is, okay, this is a skill you might not have, but you need. This is maybe the coaching that you need to own that box, to be able to manage, not just do. And that's talent development. And that's where I'm going to flip it again. Job descriptions. They're so boring. To be fair, on our job description, we call it the life career mission statement. This, again, is a document where those people write down, once they do this board, they write down, I need to get coaching on this. I need a skill on that. And they write it down, and their mentor or manager holds them accountable to bringing that to life. Yeah, so there are pieces to that. But can I turn the tables on you for a second?
Of course.
Okay. Because I believe in the strength of financial freedom. You know that. We talked about that before this. When you work with businesses and talk about forward projections, do you have them work with you in a visual document?
Yes.
And does it? Yeah, go ahead.
We use a forecasting software. So essentially what they're doing is they're inputting how many units they're going to sell of each product. What is their average price for that? What people do they need to fulfill that? How much are they going to be paying them? They're putting that in. So it's all going onto the screen. So it's visual in that they can see it. They can see the numbers. They can see the result. Which is the most fun part of it, because everything looks good on paper. Actually, not everything looks good on paper.
No, exactly.
Most people, what they get wrong is not putting it on paper in the first place, because had you done that, you would have done things differently because it didn't work on paper. And if doesn't work on paper, how can you expect it to work in real life? But putting on paper is super rewarding, because you can really see how you've covered everything you can think of. I have all the people in place I can think of. I have all the software technology I need. I'm all the marketing I need to bring in this volume of business. And yet I'm still seeing how I can have a 30, 40, 50% profit margin, because now it's there in front of me for me to see.
And how much more successful are they in reaching the goals that are written in the projection?
Oh, well, people come into, let's just use our coaching program as an example. So people come into the coaching program, most of them have been in business for 5 years plus. So they've been doing the same thing for 5 or more years, many for 15 or 20. And they've gotten no better result than what they come in the door with.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning they're at their peak, and what they're saying is I know that there's a better way. I know that there's something more than this. By putting the plan down on paper and seeing it and then executing on it within 12 months, they catapult way beyond that. As a matter of fact, our guarantee to our clients when they come in is we're going to double your personal income in 12 months, or we work for free for you until we do. So, but that's what happens. And the foundation of that, and I never focused on the visualization piece, but the foundation of that is us creating a written plan.
And there's the answer, right? It's the answer of all the pieces of accountability, putting aside fear, ego, everything else, mapping out. It's just it's a form of a map, right? Love your mug, by the way.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, I have so many different daddy mugs. It's just each month.
I know. I've got some fun ones like, yeah. But and that's what I guess that's the point, whether it's the finances, whether it's the marketing, how much money and time is spent on marketing. How many times have I worked with a business that doesn't write out what I call the funnel? Just be fun with it. Do sticky notes, draw arrows. I don't care if you use crayons, like whatever, right? This is write out what happens when a person is introduced to your business. What happens once they're introduced? Where do they go? What's their journey? The minute you write it out, you're like, oh my God, we dropped the ball here. We dropped the ball there. We do this. Oh my God, this seems like a waste of time. It is, I know this sounds like all hokey pokey, but it is just unbelievable how many businesses don't touch on every area of the business visually. And that's why we're such a huge fan of it. And we lead by example by doing it with the businesses or coaching it through our coaching program for seconds, either way. And they're like, this is it, right? So you and I could go on and on about every piece. Tech mapping, map it. Processes, map it. I mean, it just...
I have an example here. So I recently met with one of our fractional CFO clients, and they're in the personal injury business. So we basically we talked about how much their lead volume is coming in, and basically I said, okay, it sounds to me like they wanted to increase their marketing budget. I said, no, your marketing budget is actually where it needs to be based on where you want to go, right? Like we don't want to touch that. We want to get more out of it. So let's look. Do you have a sales problem? Oh no, we're great at sales. Everybody we talk to is, we close at 100%. So okay, so let's map out what happens when the phone rings. And we took out Lucid, and we created a flowchart diagram of what happens. And when we were done, it was obvious. Like I didn't even need to say anything. The client immediately looked and said, "Wow, we're making them take 20 steps before they talk to somebody about becoming a client." I said, "Now imagine how many people are falling off at each of these steps."
That's right.
What if we can have the phone answered by your intake person or by a live operator, reception service, answering service, whatever, that is going to take a lead and get them straight to the person they need to talk to and cut out all this extra stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Can we imagine that it's possible that we can probably increase our intake by 50%? 70
close rates,
maybe even 100%, right? So,
right. And when you do that, right, then, so people say, oh, well, then somebody there on the team realizes that they're not going to be needed. So let's say it's a 20-stepper, right? And 10 of those steps are done by Joe Smith. Okay. Now, Joe Smith is sitting there thinking, oh my God, what am I going to do? Right? Like, where's my value? That was my value. My value is this. My value is that. At that same moment, if you're working on another process or you're working on roles and responsibilities, you can say, Joe, guess what? You can go into the manager role now because you have the time to be coached how to manage, and now you can step into it. Bingo. The amount of time you save to free up people to learn new skills or new habits is also phenomenal. And let's be frank, it's nice on the bottom line, okay? But it's also great on culture. And now you shared, or as I say, give forward to somebody else who is not an owner, who is not a partner, on upward mobility. What freedom does that give that person? And that becomes a viral effect on the culture and the business. Now people, instead of going, oh, we're going to have a change. Oh my God, like maybe we should look at that process. They're like, you know what? Let's look at that. Let's find ways we can shift this around because it's positive. And I think that's where we need to be, especially in a world that's tough and hard in some days, and we might feel out of control outside of the office.
Yeah, I love that. And going back to something that you said, you talked about, people putting themselves in a box of where they belong, right? Are you starting with an org chart kind of thing where you already put in all the roles that are happening in your business and they're just filling in where they belong? Or is that entire thing getting done collaboratively? Like how exactly is that happening?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we actually have a grid, and you know what, if you want afterwards, I can provide it. It's a grid, and at the top, think across, is every area of the business. So marketing, sales, client service, billing, so on and so forth, right? On the left column going down, that's where you do from decision strategist, manager, doer, that type of thing. Mm-hmm. And you let people just insert their names. So it's not done in a 4D design. It's a very simple looking grid, partly because it's calming. If you do it the way we would do org design, we call it constellation. So this is there's a thing called constellation org design out there, and think of it like constellation, like stars, right? All over the place, because that's how we think of business really is. We don't think of CEOs at the top. Maybe from a reporting structure it is, but we think about functions. We don't think about reporting as much. And so, but the minute you show that constellation design of an org, everybody's done. They're like, this is too far beyond. It's like above MBA class,
it's
right?
Hard to understand.
Yeah, I mean, you went for classes for things like this. Most people did not. Yep. So that's what we just do, a straight on grid, across and down, across up all the different areas, down level of authority.
Yeah, I like that approach. That's very logical. It makes a lot of sense. I think a lot of people struggle even with stage one, which is like, okay, what's your org chart, right?
Yeah.
Because without knowing people's roles and responsibilities, without knowing where your gaps are, like what's not happening, what job's not being done.
That's right. We do this fun one. We do this one because we work with businesses that are, I would say, in transition as well, meaning every business is in transition, but in some cases you have the partners where they want to really get out of the weeds, right? Mm-hmm. And so we actually do a chart where when we go into responsibilities, we have a shed column by year. So as they're writing things down and they're getting the like, ugh, I don't like doing this, they're allowed to put it in the shed column. And then the other team member can say, I want that. And they take it and move it over to theirs. I can't explain it without showing it, but right. Yeah, so that's how we'll do it. So instead of doing org, we do authority levels and then we do responsibilities. And it's like what you said earlier. Once you do this visually, we actually don't have to do the next steps. They're like, oh, we can move this person, we can change that. It just comes to life.
Yeah, a lot of it really starts to make sense when you're looking at it that way, and that makes a lot of sense to me. We were supposed to cover leading through change. Did we touch on that? I think
the idea of visualizing is leading through change. If you draw a picture first, like you just said, even on finances, if you kind of visually lay it out, that's just change, right? Yeah. At the end of the day, when you're doing projections, you're saying that we'd like to make these changes and this is how it's going to look.
It's interesting because I wonder if there's a real correlation there, and you'll help me fill in the gaps here. So when I'm helping somebody with forecasting their growth, so when you're growing, when you want to scale, or that's the word that everybody likes now, is the buzzword, right? I want to scale my law firm. When you're scaling your firm, it's very important to understand that the investment or the expenditure comes before the result, right? Mm-hmm. And most law firm owners get this wrong. Most business owners get this wrong, where they think that when I have enough work, I'm going to hire that person. When I have enough stuff for them to do, when I have enough revenue coming in, enough money in the door, I'll increase my marketing spend. The problem is that if your marketing spend, say, is $10,000 a month, and let's just say that it's 10% of revenue. So you're doing 1.2 million right now, right? You want to get to 3 million. Well, to do 3 million, you need to be spending $300,000 or $260,000 a month, right? In marketing. So a year.
Yeah. No, a year. Yeah.
3 million is 300,000 a year, is $26,000 a month, right? So you need to be spending, instead of 10,000, you need to be spending 26,000 a month.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's going to create the $3 million in revenue.
Mm-hmm.
If we don't spend that money until we get there, we're never going to get there. So we have to commit that up front. And that's part of the forecasting process is, okay, what result do you want to create? What does it take to get that result? Now let's put that into play now and start to create that result and see what happens. I'm curious if it's similar on the COO side. If when you're doing these exercises, you're looking at it, you kind of need to put yourself in the end result in order to figure out where you need to be now.
Yeah. What if you can't see the end results? What if you're not, because a lot of non-CEO brains are not necessarily visionaries. They're boots on the ground. They're foundation people, right? They don't want to crack the foundation and, they're not flying off to the moon. So, yes, you have to have a little bit of abundance mindset at times, which is hard, with a little bit of risk aversion built into it. And so when you do the visualization, you are visualizing the future. You don't even, this is what happens when we do the visualization and we give it to them completely. Like we don't hold the mouse, right? On the keyboard, they start writing what they want, not what is today. It's so fascinating. Anyway, sometimes I wish I could go back to school for the neuroscience part of all this. But yeah, they write what they want. So I think even those that are boots on the ground, foundation people like a COO, a second in command or so forth, they actually have a vision of the future. And when you write that, then the trick is seeing where you are today, right? This is where you want to be and drawing the lines. That's what I'm talking about with the visualization is, and that's what brings all of this to life quicker. Like you said, you can accelerate faster when you're doing projections. You hit those marks sooner. There's a reason for that. You know where you're going.
Yeah.
It's come on. It's like 100%. Getting in the car and going on a trip and saying, wherever the car takes me, versus opening the map that you already have I can't believe I
use the GPS analogy all the time in the sales process and when I'm working with clients, absolutely all the time. Right. It's very simple. If the phone doesn't know where you are right now, it can't navigate to where you're going.
That's right.
If you don't put in a destination, can't navigate to where you're going. Then once you know where you are, you know where your destination is, now it can navigate the shortest route. And guess what? Even along the way, it's going to change. There's traffic buildup here. There's an accident there. Things are going to happen. You detour. You're gonna reroute. That's what we do is we don't just create this forecast once. We're doing it every 90 days because we're constantly needing to reroute. We need to keep changing and realigning towards the destination that we're trying to go to. I'm sure it's the same with you. Maybe you don't need to go through this org chart exercise every 90 days, but definitely having the clarity around, the roles, responsibilities, the team members, you probably need to do that fairly frequently. To get the most bang out.
Yeah, I think if you do it every 6 months and then do like a state of the business at the same time, like here's where we were, where we are, where we're going, that is a huge leap in the right direction.
Okay, we are out of time, but wrapping it up, 2 things from you. First of all, what is one parting piece of advice or wisdom you want to share with our audience? Number 2, if they want to find out more about you, you want to share anything with them, where do you want to send our listeners if they want to engage with you after this episode?
Yeah. Easy by spelling markers and some whiteboards and myvirtualcoo.com.
Awesome. We will link all that up in the show notes, folks. You've been listening to the Profit with Law podcast or watching it on YouTube. If you're watching it on YouTube, you got to see the edge of my whiteboard come in on the screen and my I Love Dad mug. But if you have not subscribed to our YouTube channel, you want to do so because there is a ton of content that we're releasing on YouTube that is not being released on the audio version of the podcast. We do the podcast once a week. Our YouTube channel, we are over 1,000 videos on that channel, which is crazy. We have 2 videos for every 1 subscriber. It's pretty wild. So go over there, subscribe. You get notified every time we release something new, but there's a ton of useful material, valuable material that will help you in your law firm growth. And Jennifer, we really appreciate you being here. Folks, have a wonderful day. We will see you next week. We release a new episode every Thursday. So take care.